The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
It's a good question for this week's appearance by Hillary Clinton in front of the House Select Committee on Benghazi. She's been in the hot seat before. Here we go again. What difference will this grilling make? How much deeper can the committee dig? And what might the POTUS candidate have in store to bolster her sagging poll numbers? There's only one man we can turn to for answers here and more from overseas. Pleasure to welcome back retired U.S. Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel and Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, Tony Shaffer. Tony, always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend, and we do have to begin right here with Benghazi. Hillary Clinton will once again appear this week. Is it not fair to say the committee has got to nail her this time because we go back and forth over and over again? They've got to prove to the American people this time around they got her.
Right. I think there's 2 things they're battling right now. First, the unhelpful comments of Representative McCarthy saying that this was a political witch hunt. It's not. I mean, I know the folks involved, and this is clearly a real investigation over real issues. Secondarily, as you point out, Ed, you've got to get her pinned down on this. Let's be very clear. She was the Secretary of State. She's admitted she sent Ambassador Stevens to Benghazi. We now know from reporting today out of my friend Catherine Herridge that there was memos going back as far as July of 12, asking for additional support. So there's no doubt that this was an issue. And again, it becomes the basic interrogatives have not been answered. Who, what, when, where, how? Who made the decisions? How the decisions become the policy? And for goodness sake, what did actually happen the night of the attack? I'm one of those who does believe that the president was fully informed, he was fully involved, and I do believe there are political issues still completely untouched by that evening, let alone the fact that Ms. Clinton is yet to come completely clean with what she was doing as well.
But, Tony, then you use the phrase pin her down, which I think is perfect. We've heard testimony over and over again. I have people who constantly talk to me about Benghazi, and they say, what more do you need and what more do you have? So, Tony, there's the question to you. Do you have any inclination whatsoever, idea that they've got something different this time that can really, truly put the nail in and just drive this thing home?
Well, you've got insider information from the folks who were there and then also leading up to and after. Let me be clear on this. I think there's huge pieces of the cover-up, and I'll say cover-up, that have not yet been fully developed or looked at. Let's be direct on this. General Petraeus, when he was director of CIA, I believe perjured himself in front of Congress on this. I believe he misled them. I believe others misled them. I believe that several folks were actually active in the suppression of the real facts after the fact to help President Obama gain re-election. That right there on its face is bad. What's worse, obviously, is the fact that at the core of all this, it is a gun deal gone bad. There's indications now that the real root of the issue was the fact that the weapons in Benghazi that were being accumulated, picked up by the CIA at the annex, were actually being transferred to the unsavory elements in Syria via Turkey. So I think that's the other thing here that people are reluctant to actually look at in the light of day. And there's been clear indications. Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, former director of DI, has admitted his involvement in this. So that's another aspect of this which has not been fully developed, and I think it needs to be fully exploited. The bottom line is this: I think there's a situation akin to essentially the Iran-Contra gate, whatever you want to call it, the Iran-Contra spectacle of the Reagan White House, right here before us in this current White House, and Clinton was in the front row of whatever happened.
Tony, in your opinion, your experience, what do you need to hear this week that will convince you that they are going down the right path? But on the other side, what are you fearful of hearing that will tell you that the committee is once again off track?
Well, what we need to hear essentially is, Ms. Clinton, tell us what you knew exactly beforehand, and then impeach her with the documents they have if she goes off course. Clarify in her own words what happened the night of. I mean, have her do a narrative, have her just tell us the story. And then afterwards, have her question about why wasn't she actually questioned as part of the accountability board after the fact. I think they barely even touched her at all, and then go through that. And if I'll know, obviously, if they don't ask these questions of her, Ed. Trey, Gowdy and company are smart folks. They're investigators. They're prosecutors. They know how to go about asking some very difficult questions. So we all know what the difficult questions are. The question becomes, obviously, if they ask them. If they ask the hard questions, and we know they're playing it straight up.
Is it not fair to say, though, that what Trey Gowdy and the committee have to do this time is they cannot make this about her bid for president? The minute they start to stray there, it will tell you that they're reaching and they don't have enough to get her.
I don't think they will go down that path. I don't see any reason to. And again, yeah, I agree. Representative Cummings would be all over them if this happens. So I do believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they have new information. The question is, obviously, how hard do they go at Ms. Clinton with that new information? And obviously, can they do it in a way which really puts her on the hot seat? And I'd like to believe they will.
What do you expect then to come from Hillary Clinton in order to deflect and to dodge once again and to try to prove her innocence? Because you know that while the committee isn't going to talk about president, for her, and looking at her poll numbers right now, this is huge in her bid to become president.
Yeah, she got no bump out of the so-called win of the CNN debate, which is notable. And again, it goes back. This hearing, it goes to the heart of her issue, believability and trustworthiness. And at this point in time, I think most people, Ed, recognize that she's not trustworthy. And frankly, I think it's a well-founded observation. In this case, she will probably do two things: try to divert everything to her subordinates. Patrick Kennedy, apparently, Undersecretary of State, was the one who actually disapproved the additional security for Benghazi. So she'll say, I had no idea. It was all on Kennedy. And the other thing she's going to do is basically say, this is all partisan. This is not, relevant to the core issue of what happened that night. And I obviously disagree with that. But that's the two things I think she's going to do, is say that it's either not her fault or you're asking me these questions because it's a partisan issue, which obviously I don't believe it is.
All right, Tony, a couple of minutes we got left here. Fascinating article in the New York Times that was entitled Untangling the Overlapping Conflicts in the Syrian War. Because what they did here, they pointed out this is a civil war, a war against ISIS. There are dozens of different groups here that are constantly overlapping. Here's the one thing I took out of this. Porous Turkish borders and private Arab dollars have helped the Islamic State's rise. We don't talk about that enough. We've got all these groups here, but Turkey and the Arab states right now, you've got to figure out a way not to just get them involved, but to shut down what they're doing as well before we shut down ISIS. Fair?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Ed, we've talked multiple times about the porous border between Syria and Turkey. I mean, as much as supposedly Turkey is an ally, they have not been an ally when it comes to ISIS. They have actually helped fund it. They've given it precursor support. That includes some of the arms I just mentioned regarding Benghazi. They received these precursor elements of ISIS, received the weapons out of Benghazi. So it's an inconvenient truth, and I think, Ed, part of the reason we're not seeing it is because at the time, the Turkish were actually doing kind of what we wanted them to do. ISIS is now out of control, and for us to understand more clearly, and you've probably seen me talk about this on other channels, Putin is doing us a favor. Now, not long-term, but for now. He's actually weighing into ISIS in a way we wouldn't have done otherwise. He's done more damage to them in a month than we did in a year because he's trying to defend his ally, Assad. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's what it is. Problem is with this, Ed, as you point out, there's dozens of groups, and Putin's attacking all of them, even the ones we've helped train. So as much as John McCain does not appreciate Putin doing what he's doing, I think for the short term anyway, he's actually doing us a favor. We've got to figure out, though, Ed, what we're going to do in the long term about the porous border and about Russia's incursion into Syria. This is not good news in the long term for us.
About 45 seconds. UK Prime Minister David Cameron has a new plan. He will seize passports from young people at risk of traveling abroad to join groups like the Islamic State. Is that really going to do anything?
I don't know. This is something that I actually am intimately involved. The Association of British Muslims, who I work with, actually met with David Cameron twice this year so far. They are doing everything they can, Ed, to basically de-radicalize the Islamic faith in England, and God bless them for doing it. Is this the right answer? Maybe not, but it's something.
You think it's at least a step in the right direction, though, correct? Even though it's not going to be the end-all.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think this is where they got to start somewhere, and this is a good place to begin. We're not even doing that.
The measures also include barring people convicted of extremist offenses from working with children. One can only hope that they get it right, and maybe then indeed the United States and other countries will start to look at it as well. Tony Shaffer, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll look forward to talking to you again next time. And one of these days, we'll have some good news to talk about in the fight against ISIS. Take care. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, speaking of the fight against ISIS, a gentleman who believes in an isolationist policy Yet you still have to wonder what that means about all those people who are dying in wars around the world. Not showing in the polls, but not giving up either. We're going to go one-on-one with Rand Paul, an exclusive, next, right here on The Hard Line.